Welcome to a new Daily Top AskReddit video. Today's topic:
what's something people don't understand until they've been through it themselves? Mental illness. Still so many people who think depression means you're just sad for a while. And then they come in with, "I've been depressed. You just need to choose to be happy and push through it." Quote. Chronic lower back pain. Sciatica entered the chat. Death of a child, FK cancer. So sorry for your loss, few. Having a loving relationship with people. Not necessarily romantic, just a human bond that isn't some cheap AQC you ain't ship. Loneliness reduces the life expectancy, slightly frowning face. Sometimes it's because people with friends and loved ones have someone to get worried when you disappear and check up on you. That's the reason why social drinkers tend to live longer than those who don't drink at all, despite the harmful effects of alcohol. Poverty. People who grew up having money often think that poverty is a result of laziness. And if you do eventually become financially stable, you still have habits and a different mindset because you grew up poor. It takes a lot of time to change that and realize that you don't have to save money all the time and you have enough for everything you need. It's difficult not to feel guilty when you buy something for yourself, and buying something that's not on sale always feels illegal. 100% this, literal, and having to calculate how much each purchase will fuck you later in the month, having to ration yourself to one meal per day, having only the cheapest shittiest version of everything, which immediately breaks because of planned obsolescence. See, Samuel Vine's Boots Theory of Economics lol. I am always fiddling with my budget. I know how much I spend and how much money I'll have by the end of the month, but anytime I have a cup of coffee from Dunkin' or buy some Taco Bell, I go to my budget and do the math for the next 6 months to make sure it won't break my bank. It's infuriating lol. Getting into a car crash. It's traumatizing when you're completely aware of what's happening, but even more traumatizing knowing you can't do anything about it while you're crashing. I remember when my car crashed, I hit black ice, my brain kind of switching off and waiting for the impact, knowing there was nothing else I could do. Everything went silent. It was so odd. It must have been loud, but I didn't hear a thing. Forced myself to drive that route again as soon as possible after, so I wouldn't build it up in my head. It was relatively minor, although the car was written off, but the lack of control and the way my brain just accepted what was happening was wild. I had an opposite experience. Stopped at a red light, I looked to see a car coming at full speed. I barely had time to react before the impact. It was loud and disorienting. Suddenly I was laid back in my seat and it took me a second to realize what just happened. And that realization was scary as fuck. My wife and kids were in the car, then I heard my daughter cry out, "I need a doctor." I felt so much fear and anxiety. I didn't know if any of us had life-threatening injuries, myself included. My torso immediately started aching, seatbelt, but I was scared my internals got fucked up. They didn't. Ultimately everyone was okay, but I still have PTSD in the car. That's exactly what happened to me too. 1 month after getting my license. I was driving to school and hit a patch of black ice and tried correcting the car and overturned. Once that happened, all I could do was stare at the 2 parked cars I was about to crash into. Almost 5 seconds of staring out my window as I was about to make the impact felt like forever. Sexual assault. It's a different whole beast that you have to experience it before you just spout off on what you think, and you have to really understand what's going on and what to do to deal with the aftermath. And the trauma and recovery of regaining your identity as a person and not as a victim, and the fact that we still don't think about it or work with it with any gender is appalling. This, and the fact that people still have the nerve to tell you to get over it when there are serious ramifications after the fact. No, Karen, I will not fucking get over it. A major part of my life and human nature has been tainted, abused, and perverted, and nobody wants to understand that. I've been through narcissistic abuse. I can recognize how much it changed me and messed with my mental health. I'm a different person now. I feel blessed it didn't involve sexual abuse, and physical abuse was also only indirect, like disturbed sleep. I've been through hell enough without sexual abuse. I can't imagine the damage it would do or would have done to me if added it to my experience. I live in dread of finding myself in a relationship that becomes abusive in that way. And I also acknowledge that it doesn't need a relationship to happen, but my experience was based a lot on broken trust, so my mind comes back to it frequently. Though they're not the same, different kinds of abuses share common points. After being through any kind of it, I feel you're also more sympathetic to victims of other kinds of abuses. Especially as a kid, because for a long time you don't even understand what happened to you. Or you don't even fucking remember it until you're a fully grown adult, with a mostly ruined life. You don't know why it's ruined. Then it starts to hit ya. A terminal illness. As someone with Huntington's disease, a terminal illness, I endorse this comment. Lots of people say if they had HD diagnosis they'd kill themselves. It's hard to hear people say they'd kill themselves if they were me. But the thing is, I think most people who say that really wouldn't. I just enjoy my life so much, I don't want to die. Damned near everything. I mean, what do we understand before we live it? Losing your parent, it's been 4 years and I still cry for my dad, I miss him a lot. P.S. I am reading the replies to my comment with watery eyes, may God keeps everyone's parents safe and healthy. I lost my mum 26 years ago. I still cry for her now. It's sad, I can feel what you go through, sadly we can't do anything. Divorce. Being cheated on. Having your heart broken. Being a single parent. It's the hardest thing I've ever gone through. Sad face. Long-term infidelity was so devastating. My therapist said it was like CPTSD, but others say it's nothing like that. So, I got to the lowest part of my life with some of the worst feelings I've ever had, no idea who I was, and just supposed to let it go. It's no big deal. Be a man. Yay. They don't get it. Sad face. There's a ton of details that make things so much worse, but the whole, it's no big deal. Just move on, is what always bugs me about that. People really don't understand how devastating it can be. 5 years later, all the crap I went through. I still have trust issues. I've had a couple of relationships in the beginning and I couldn't bring myself to trust them, and they both fell apart. I've been single for 3 years, very lonely, terrified of commitment. I've been cheated on in almost every relationship I've been in. Now I'm afraid of commitment and I've been single for almost 8 years at this point. It fucked me up pretty badly for a while, but consistent, long-term, multimodal therapy, CBT, DBT, EMDR, etc., has helped a lot. Now I've settled into being content and even happy single, but I do miss companionship sometimes. Any form of addiction. My favorite phrase heard in a meeting is, drinking, or using, against my will. I have never met a normie who understands that for the addict it was not a choice. I'm a sober alcoholic, and while it is very much my choice to not drink nowadays, it was very much out of my control or will back when I drank. It was like choosing not to breathe. It just felt insane that people go about their everyday lives without numbing themselves constantly because reality just felt so terrifying and impossible to handle until I was a few drinks deep. How it gets you is that you reach a point where, sober, is a catastrophic hangover, feeling like death and so anxious that you can barely leave your room. It's not until you go through a controlled detox program like I did with medical supervision, you need it at the point I was at, that you realize what being sober and not hungover actually felt like, and how good it felt compared to the hell you found yourself in. This is why I think detox and rehab programs should be free, at least for the first time a person needs them. The way I looked at addicts and thought this can never happen to me, I'm too strong. I was very wrong, and it ruined my life. People also think that just because they reach adulthood without having had an addiction that it can't still happen at some point. There are so many stories of older people that had to have a surgery or something and had a painkiller prescription that lead to them becoming addicted later in life. Granted, that happened more in the early 2000s, but it still happens. ADHD. I think it's really hard for someone with normal executive function to understand what it's like to not. I literally feel embarrassed telling people I have ADHD when trying to explain my behavior cause I just know they're rolling their eyes into the back of their head. If it helps, that may just be your perception of it. But everyone else around you probably doesn't care, or it doesn't impact their opinion of you at all. 1000%. It's so difficult to explain to people around me that I don't have control over my brain, no matter how hard I try. And what's worse, is that it sounds like complete bullshit to a lot of people. Just sounds like you're being lazy or lack motivation or something. It's incredibly frustrating. Death of a child by suicide. I will always feel guilt for not making his life turn out better. Definitely. Losing a child is devastating. Losing a child to suicide adds whole new layers of guilt and regret. I'm still trying to deal with the fact that my son's life was so sad he would rather be gone. I'm so sorry for your loss. One of my closest friends just killed himself a few months back. We're well into adulthood. I feel horrible for his father. I love that man. I can see the pain in his eyes every time we interact. They were so close. I'm so sorry to both of you, it wasn't your fault. Depression. Yeah, most people think it feel like you are sad. I felt it was much more feeling numb than sad. It's like the brain tries to protect itself from the bottomless pit that is your emotions, so I kinda just turns it off, so nothing feels like anything anymore. 17 years and counting for me. Losing a beloved pet. It's one of those weird things where you can absolutely understand why they don't get it. Because it doesn't make much sense why it hurts so much. They're not blood related, not even the same species. They're so far removed from us, that from the outside, it probably just looks like losing a favorite item that has sentimental value. But let me tell you, I've lost a lot of family members in my life. But none of those deaths compared to the sheer utter soul-rending pain as losing my dog was. It is the only time in my life where I did not have a say, did not have any control, in my reaction. I had gone through the deaths of lots of family pets, so I thought I understood what it would be like. But nothing prepared me for the pain of losing my 16-year-old cat, even though he was old and I knew it was coming. It was like a shotgun to the chest. It hurt physically, for weeks. They're so intertwined with your day-to-day life, it's more like losing a limb than a family member. And there's so much guilt involved in being in charge of when to say goodbye, when to end their suffering. Even when you know you've done your best, it feels like you could have done everything differently. It's so much more intense than you'd think.